A eunuch is a man who may have been castrated, typically early enough in his life for this change to have major hormonal consequences. In some ancient texts, eunuch may refer to a man who is not castrated but who is impotent, celibate, or otherwise not inclined to marry and procreate. Castration was typically carried out on the soon-to-be eunuch without his consent in order that he might perform a specific social function. This was common in many societies. The earliest records for intentional castration to produce eunuchs are from the Sumerian city of Lagash in the 21st century BC. Over the millennia since, they have performed a wide variety of functions in many different cultures. Courtiers or equivalent domestics, treble singers, religious specialists, soldiers, royal guards, government officials, and guardians of women or harem servants. Eunuchs would usually be servants or slaves who had been castrated in order to make them reliable servants of a royal court where physical access to the ruler could wield great influence. Seemingly lowly domestic functions, such as making the ruler's bed, bathing him, cutting his hair, carrying him in his litter, or even relaying messages, could in theory give a eunuch the ruler's ear, and impart de facto power on the formerly humble but trusted servant. Similar instances are reflected in the humble origins and etymology of many high officers. Eunuchs supposedly did not generally have loyalties to the military, the aristocracy, or to a family of their own, and were thus seen as more trustworthy and less interested in establishing a private dynasty. Because their condition usually lowered their social status, they could also be easily replaced or killed without repercussion. In cultures that had both harems and eunuchs, eunuchs were sometimes used as harem servants or seraglio guards. In Latin, the words eunuchus, spado, and castratus were used to denote eunuchs. Etymology. Eunuch comes from the Greek word eunuchus, first attested in a fragment of Hipponax. The 6th century BCE comic poet and prolific inventor of compound words. The acerbic poet describes a certain lover of fine food having consumed his estate dining lavishly and at leisure every day on tuna and garlic honey, cheese pâté like a Lampsacene eunuchus. In ancient classical literature from the early 5th century onward, the word generally designates some incapacity for or abstention from procreation, whether due to natural constitution or to physical mutilation. For instance, Lucian suggests two methods to determine whether someone is a eunuch: physical inspection of the body, or scrutiny of his ability to perform sexually with females. The earliest surviving etymology of the word is from late antiquity. The 5th century Etymologicon by Orion of Thebes offers two alternative origins for the word eunuch. First, to teneunen, guarding the bed, a derivation inferred from eunuchs' established role at the time as bedchamber attendants in the imperial palace, and second, to eutunu, being good with respect to the mind, which Orion explains based on their being deprived of male-female intercourse. The things that the ancients used to call irrational. Orion's second option reflects well-established idioms in Greek, as shown by entries for nous, eunuchs and nekine in Liddell and Scott's Greek-English lexicon, while the first option is not listed as an idiom under eun in that standard reference work. However, the first option was cited by the late 9th century Byzantine Emperor Leo VI in his new Constitution 98 banning the marriage of eunuchs, in which he noted eunuchs' reputation as trustworthy guardians of the marriage bed, and claimed that the very word eunuch attested to this kind of employment. The emperor also goes further than Orion by attributing eunuchs' lack of male-female intercourse specifically to castration, which he said was performed with the intention that they will no longer do the things that males do, or at least to extinguish whatever has to do with desire for the female sex. The 11th century Byzantine monk Nikon of the Black Mountain, opting instead for Orion's second alternative, stated that the word came from eunuin, thus meaning to be well-minded, well-inclined, well-disposed or favorable. But unlike Orion, he argued that this was due to the trust that certain jealous and suspicious foreign rulers placed in the loyalty of their eunuchized servants. Theophylact of Ohrid, in a dialogue in defense of eunuchs, also stated that the origin of the word was from eunuin and echein, to have, hold, since they were always well-disposed toward the master who held or owned them. The 12th century Etymologicum Magnum essentially repeats the entry from Orion, but stands by the first option, while attributing the second option to what some say. In the late 12th century, Eustathius of Thessalonica offered an original derivation of the word from Eunice plus ochuin, deprived of mating. In translations of the Bible into modern European languages, such as the Luther Bible or the King James Bible, the word eunuchus as found in the Latin Vulgate is usually rendered as officer, official or chamberlain, consistent with the idea that the original meaning of eunuch was bedkeeper. Modern religious scholars have been disinclined to assume that the courts of Israel and Judah included castrated men, even though the original translation of the Bible into Greek used the word eunuchus. The early 17th century scholar and theologian Gerardus Vossius therefore explains that the word originally designated an office, and he affirms the view that it was derived from eunuin echein. He says the word only came to be applied to castrated men in general because such men were the usual holders of that office. Still, Vossius notes the alternate etymologies offered by Eustathius and others, calling these analyses quite subtle. Then, after having previously declared that eunuch designated an office, Vossius ultimately sums up his argument in a different way, saying that the word originally signified continent men, to whom the care of women was entrusted, and later came to refer to castration because, among foreigners, that role was performed by those with mutilated bodies. Modern etymologists have followed Orion's first option. In an influential 1925 essay on the word eunuch and related terms, Ernst Mars suggested that Eustathius's derivation can or must be laid to rest, and he affirmed the derivation from eunuin echein, without mentioning the other derivation from eunus and echein. One major problem, however, with the derivation from eun is that, according to the rules of Greek vowel contractions, the ow in eunuchus requires an o sound between the contracted words, specifically e plus o, e plus ow, o plus e, o plus a, o plus o or o plus ow, and cannot feature in a sound there. As an alpha declension noun, eun features the stem vowel a, but a sound will not combine with any other vowels to produce the ow that occurs in eunuchus. All words that are formed by adding onto eun have an a sound or long e sound in the combined syllable, as in eunata or euneta, eunios or eunan. By analogy, a compound between eun and echein would be expected to come out as eunekos, or in English, ernsch, even if the form okos were compounded with eun, as many dictionaries suggest. The stem vowel a from eun combined with the initial o from okos would combine to form an omega, and the resulting word would be expected to come out as eunokos, with the English word becoming eunuch. On the other hand, the etymology offered by Eustathius would work only if eunus contributes an e sound or o sound to the compound. Unfortunately, there are no known compounds of eunus to use for comparison. Consequently, the rules of Greek vowel contraction at any rate favor the derivation from eunus and echein, and in fact, other words that have the same ending ukos feature a stem vowel oo in the first word of the compound, such as skeptokos, rhabdokos, lampeducos, ophirokos and klidokos. Be that as it may, virtually all modern reference works cite the derivation from eun and echein.